Many countries fly a flag to inspire and remind folks of their patriotism and the sacrifices made by those who came before them. Now, unless you live under a rock, you've probably at least seen this flag. It is the flag of the Philippines. Each element of it represents an aspect of Philippine bravery, valor, sacrifice, patriotism, and peace. But without Marcela Agoncillo, it may have looked vastly different. She was born in 1859 in Taal, Batangas, Philippines. It was a city well known for embroidery work. That's intricate sewing, kids. Her family was very wealthy. Her parents were very strict and made sure she got the very best education available to girls at the time. She was eventually sent to the Colegio de Santa Catalina convent, where she excelled in needlework, Spanish, and music. Some sources said she was a gifted singer, too. And she was incredibly, breathtakingly beautiful. Folks would literally line the path just to catch a glimpse of her anytime she walked to church. Of course, being that beautiful meant that dudes noticed. Being from a wealthy family didn't exactly discourage that notice. Well, every little greedy dog that came sniffing about met nothing more than her indifference and her parents' disapproval. That is, until she met Felipe Agoncillo, a very handsome young man who also came from a very wealthy family. He was a, quote, promising young lawyer who fought for the poor. Eventually, he became a diplomat for the new Philippine government. He is, in fact, recognized as the country's first diplomat. But before that happened, he was persistent. Took him a long time, but eventually she admitted she did want to be with him. And her family finally gave approval. She and Felipe were about 30 years old when they got hitched. They went on to have 6 daughters, 5 of whom survived past childhood. For their entire marriage, she was his constant and devoted companion. So Felipe was a personal friend of one Emilio Aguinaldo, the leader of a revolution fighting Spanish colonization. Hundreds of years of Spanish colonization. And Felipe was all in, which the Spanish found to be a problem. And they began sending people into exile from their own country. You know, can't have that example set for the common folk. Felipe was labeled a traitor. So in April of 1895, he voluntarily took a ship to Japan, then moved on to settle in a house in Hong Kong. Now, just before he boarded the ship, and because he couldn't risk going home to say goodbye, he bought a beautiful bracelet for his wife and had it delivered to her. It contained a diamond for each of the children they had at the time. She called it her most treasured, and she calmly accepted his absence. 22 months later, she and the kids joined him in Hong Kong. They stayed there from 1895 to 1906. Their home there became a sanctuary, a place for other revolutionaries who had also been forced out of their own country. And revolutionary leadership made plans there. The Agoncillos had been known for their philanthropy in the Philippines. That didn't stop in Hong Kong. If somebody needed something, their door was always open. Still, money and resources were really tight. Marcela put her gift for sewing to good work and made pinafores for girls to sell for extra money. But a lot of what they had went into the coffers of the revolution. Still, no matter how little they had, the Agoncillos gave what they could. Marcela was also a patriot, whose heart, quote, bled for her people, suffering under often brutal Spanish authorities. The Pact of Biak-na-Bato was signed in December of 1897. It was a truce between Aguinaldo and Spanish leadership, which the Spanish, of course, completely disregarded. Then they came for Aguinaldo and others. So he and more than 40 other revolutionary leaders also voluntarily left the Philippines and headed to Hong Kong. They arrived at the Agoncillos' place. Plans and a request were made. See, Aguinaldo had made a sketch, an idea for a new flag, the flag of an independent Philippines. Each element was to represent the revolution and patriotism. Unfortunately for him, Aguinaldo did not know how to sew, but he knew that Marcela could, and that she was very good at it. So he asked her to bring his design to life. It's important to know that at that time, women were pretty limited on how they could contribute to the revolution. because they were women. So she jumped at his request. It was an opportunity to do what she could for the revolution. She bought silk from a nearby shop in Hong Kong, then recruited her 7-year-old daughter and the niece of another leader of the revolution. Together, they, quote, meticulously cut, sewed, and embroidered the silk with gold. All sources said it took only 5 days. But that does not mean that it went smoothly. I mean, come on, they were hand sewing. That shit hurts, with a bit of help from a sewing machine. But Marcela was paying attention to detail, and at one point noticed the flag wasn't coming out quite right. See, there was supposed to be a bursting sun in the center, and the rays of that sun that they'd already stitched were way off. They ripped out the stitches and began again. On the 17th of May, 1898, the first Philippine president, Aguinaldo, was planning a return from Hong Kong to the Philippines. That day, Marcela personally delivered that flag to him. It was packed in his things and taken back to Manila. Then, on the 28th of May, 1898, that flag was flown outside his window in celebration of a recent defeat that the Filipinos had dealt to Spain. 12th June, 1898, President Aguinaldo delivered a proclamation, a declaration of independence from Spain's colonial rule. As you can imagine, the Spanish authorities did not like that. The Agoncillos were still in Hong Kong, so she didn't get to see her flag flown. By 1906, Felipe was a diplomat, traveling to various countries, working to get those countries to recognize the Philippines as an independent country. He sent for his family. He returned to his law practice, and they quickly regained their wealth. Marcela focused on charitable causes. But after Felipe passed away, she and her youngest children suffered because of Japanese occupation. They fought starvation, lack of basic necessities, but she always stayed strong and did what needed doing. Once their house was burned to the ground, all she said to the kids was, "We will then go to Taal." So in 1945, the Battle of Manila took place. That's when Filipinos and Americans fought together against the Japanese. It was World War II. Marcela endured, but she had never stopped mourning Felipe. Sources said her daughters were so worried about her deep distress that they took down all of their father's photos to ease her pain. Her health steadily failed. She passed away peacefully in her sleep on 30th May, 1946, in Taal, aged 86 years. She was ultimately interred next to her husband in Manila. Today, Marcela Agoncillo is honored as a national hero. Her former home is a museum, and at the Presidential Museum and Library, you can see the actual thimbles she used while she was sewing the flag. There are paintings and sculptures and other memorials, like an elementary school named for her in Manila. The appearance of the Philippine flag has changed a bit over the years, though its meaning has not. It still represents the heart of a nation. Circumstance and education made Marcela Agoncillo a gifted seamstress. Her patriotism made her the mother of the Philippine flag.